Close your eyes and imagine that right now, there are 1,000 versions of your life floating in the field around you. In one, you are already free. In another, you are already loved. In another, you already have everything you spent years searching for. These versions are not fantasy. They are quantum possibilities, real though still invisible. But there is something that decides, with surgical precision, which of them will become your gift. Your look. The way you observe the world, yourself, your pain, you are choosing, every second, which reality will collapse in front of you. And here's the most forgotten part. You don't see what is. You see what you've learned to see. And as long as you continue to observe life with the same old eyes, from fear, from scarcity, from surveillance, you will continue to collapse into the same old experiences. You think you're just seeing reality, but in fact, you are creating her. Without realizing it, his gaze became a cell. And that's why the observer effect changes everything. Because when you change the observer, reality changes with you. In 1801, a simple experiment forever transformed our understanding of the universe. Called a double-slit experiment, he showed that subatomic particles, the fundamental building blocks of reality, behave like waves until they are observed. But the moment an observer enters the equation, the behavior changes. The wave collapses, the particle becomes fixed, possibility becomes fact, i.e., the act of observing changes the outcome. This is not a metaphor, it's science. And if this is true at the quantum level, why would it be any different with your life? Your attention is the most powerful reality collapse instrument. It is she who chooses, among infinite potentials, what will be lived. But here's the dilemma. You are collapsing what wish or what themes, because the look is not neutral. It carries intention, frequency, and emotional charge. And if your attention is fixed on patterns of pain, fear, or scarcity, the field understands. That's what he wants to reinforce. You don't realize it, but you repeat predictable futures based on what you're used to seeing. You see absence and create more absence, see conflict and attract more tension, see stagnation and seal the cycle. Your consciousness, which could be a sculptor of new realities, becomes only a photographer of the past. And the present obeys. Joe Dispenza states that most people wake up every day seeing the world through the eyes of the previous day. And so it reaffirms the same identity, collapses the same thoughts, feels the same emotions, and lives the same reality. But there is another way to look at it, a look that is not limited to what already exists, a look that sees beyond the visible, which contemplates the invisible as real, which vibrates possibility where before there was a pattern. This is the look of the co-creator, the observer who not only sees, but chooses what to observe. And with that, everything changes. There's a prison that has no bars, but it prevents you from walking. It has no walls, but it limits what you can achieve. It was not built with bricks, but with emotional interpretations, ancient memories, and invisible meanings. This prison is their conditioned gaze, the unconscious way you interpret everything that happens, not for what it is, but for what it is who you learned to be. The human mind does not see reality as it is. It sees reality as she was trained to see it. And this training begins early, long before any conscious choice. You observe the world through lenses shaped by trauma, rejection, inherited beliefs, repeated experiences. And what you call fact is often just an emotional confirmation of what you already believe about yourself. You don't realize it, but you are confirming the same plot every day. It's always hard for me. Nothing changes. I try, but it never works. Relationships are dangerous. Money is not for me. And then life, obedient as a vibrational mirror, reflects back these invisible conclusions. But the most fascinating and frightening thing is that you only see what you are trying to confirm. This is what psychology calls confirmation bias, and in the quantum field, we can call it vibrational confirmation bias. You attract evidence, people, situations, sensations that reinforce the frequency you emit the most. Not because it's what you want, but because it's what you expect. The mind is selective. It filters more than 99% of the information your senses capture. And the criteria for this filter is simple. Does this confirm what I already know about myself? If yes, the mind lets it pass. If not, it ignores it. You may have an incredible opportunity in front of you and not see it. You can receive genuine love, and reject it. It can be seen, recognized, remembered, but your mind, still stuck in the frequency of invisibility, simply does not register. You thus become victim of his own observation. And this is one of the deepest pains of waking life. Realize that it is not the world that is limiting you. It's what you believe that the world is, and what you believe you deserve from him. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists, not because the world insists, but because you still observe." Resistance is actually a form of attention, and attention is pure vibration. You say, "I don't want this anymore," but you're looking at this all the time. It is commenting, judging, remembering, reliving, and the field, like an obedient artist, draws more of the same. Because where attention goes, energy goes. And where the energy is, there inevitably reality collapses. But here is the invitation of power. You can get out of this prison. You can reprogram what you observe, not changing the world out there, but changing who you are as you watch. Because the real quantum leap is not changing reality, it is to change observer. It's about changing your point of attention, and with that, completely changing the storyline that unfolds. Imagine your mind as a projector. It releases images to the world based on the rolls of film it carries inside. As long as these films are the same, memories of pain, abandonment, failure, what will be projected will always be more of the same. But if you change the film, the projection changes too. And it all starts with a simple yet transformative choice. I am no longer a victim of what I see. I am the one who decides what to see. And as you decide, you start to see new signs, small detours, new perspectives, previously impossible situations beginning to insinuate themselves. Not because the world has changed, but why do you finally look with different eyes? And these new eyes don't just see differently, they collapse differently. Close your eyes for a moment and think of something you repeat every day. Maybe it's a constant worry, a thought about something that has not yet arrived, a feeling of not being enough. Now understand, every time you think this, your brain is learning to be that thought. This is not a metaphor, it's a scientific fact. A neuroscience model reveals a simple but revolutionary truth. What you focus on grows stronger. Your brain is plastic. It constantly reshapes itself based on what you do, repeats with emotional attention. It's what we call synaptic plasticity, the ability of neurons to connect and strengthen pathways based on repetition. And the fundamental rule of this process was summarized in the so-called Hebb effect. Neurons that fire together, wire together. In other words, every time you think and feel something repeatedly, you are strengthening this circuit as a habit, as a neurological identity. Now think about the impact of this. If you constantly focus on your problems, your fears, your limitations, your brain becomes an expert in scarcity, in doubt, in survival. You don't just think that, you become this. What's more, the brain begins to look for these experiences in the external world to validate its programming. This is where a second powerful mechanism comes in, the reticular activating system, RAS. This is the part of your brain responsible for filtering and directing your attention. It works like a vibrational radar. Whatever you focus on emotionally, the SRA interprets as important and begins to hunt more of that in the environment. That's why when you buy a new car, you start seeing it everywhere. Or when you're pregnant, you see pregnant women everywhere. It's not a coincidence. It's neuroscience. You train your brain to notice more of what you believe is relevant. Now imagine, if your focus is constantly on problems, lack, and need, the SRA understands. This is important. Let's get more of this. And suddenly, your attention becomes selective to that which confirms your fear. You enter an environment full of possibilities, but you only notice what reaffirms your old pattern. You talk to someone full of love, but you only notice the silence that reminds you of rejection. You live a day with real chances of change, but you only register the detail that reinforces that nothing changes. This is not bad luck. It is attention distorted by the emotional identity your brain has learned to support. And this distortion becomes reality. Not because the world is against you, but because your neurological filter is calibrated to confirm the frequency of your survival. And this brings us to another crucial point, the difference between surviving and creating. When your brain is focused on vigilance, it activates the survival mode. It releases cortisol, it contracts the body, it closes the heart, It shuts down creativity. It is a state of self-protection. You're not living, you're just avoiding being hurt. And in this state, the manifestation does not happen, because the quantum field responds to emotional and vibrational coherence. If your body is on alert, your mind is on edge, and your nervous system is on edge, the field feels he is not yet ready to receive. You can wish hard, visualize with discipline, say affirmations all day long, but if your system is addicted to the focus of pain, the dominant frequency will still be that of absence. And the universe, with scientific precision, responds to this. But here's the good news. You can recalibrate your brain. You can retrain your attention. You can consciously choose new focuses. And with loving, intentional repetition, your neural system begins to reorganize itself. You start to notice things that previously went unnoticed. You begin to notice signs of synchronicity, possibilities, small breakthroughs. And the brain, by capturing these experiences, transforms them into new neurological identities. This is how the miracle begins. Not with something magical falling from the sky, but with new routes being traced in your own brain. And every new thought, every redirected attention, every conscious vibrational choice, it is a seed of a new reality being planted, both in the quantum field and in your neurological structure. Attention is creation. Focus is vibration. Choice is collapse. And now you have the chance to change everything, starting with what you choose. Have you ever wondered why there are so many sincere wishes don't come true? You visualize with intention, you feel strongly, you ask with faith, but what you want remains far away, and frustration sets in. Maybe you've started blaming yourself, thinking you're doing something wrong, that you're incapable, that life didn't choose you. But what if the problem isn't desire itself, it's the frequency from which it is being observed? In the language of the quantum field, wishing is not enough. Desire, when not accompanied by a coherent vibration, turns into a statement of absence. You want, but while you want, you notice what's missing. You visualize, but while you visualize, you feel the pain of not having it yet. You affirm, but your emotional frequency remains tied to scarcity. And the field, which does not respond to your words, but to your internal state, mirrors exactly this inconsistency. You become hostage to his own desire. It ceases to be a seed of creation and becomes a daily reminder of what is not yet real. And here's the tricky part. You may desire something intensely, but if your vibration is anchored in lack, the universe only collapses more of what confirms that absence. This is not punishment. It is energetic precision. Joe Dispenza is direct in stating, you cannot create a new future while living in the old emotional state. If your body still vibrates like someone who has lost, like someone who is waiting, like someone who doesn't have, it emits disorganized signals, and the field does not respond to your mind. He responds to your emotional body. That's why so many people sabotage themselves without realizing it. They want love, but they look at the world with suspicious eyes. They want prosperity, but they feel fear when they see their bank account. They want a cure, but they continue to relate to the body as an enemy. There is a profound misalignment between what one desires and what one vibrates, between what is imagined and what is observed in the mirror of reality. And it is precisely this gap that prevents collapse. Because in the quantum field, the observer is part of the equation of reality. You are not a passive being before the world. You are who chooses what to observe, and with that, what to create. But when your gaze is fixed on the pain of, I don't have it yet, your attention strengthens that timeline. You stay anchored in the emotional past and try to build a different future with the same blocks of pain. It's like wanting to write a new book with the pages of the old one. The jump only happens when you change the state of the observer. And this change is not rational. She is emotional. You can understand all the concepts, memorize all the mantras, and take all the courses. But as long as your body vibrates with anxiety, scarcity, fear, doubt, your frequency continues to be that of whoever can't yet. And the universe hears this more clearly than any statement that comes out of your mouth. But there is a way, a path of realignment, of reconnection, of vibrational recalibration. It begins when you stop observing what is missing and begin to vibrate like someone who it is already collapsing. When you stop being hostage to desire and become the conscious observer of frequency. It's a subtle but radical change. You stop asking, when will it arrive? And he goes on to say, it's already coming because I'm already in the state of receiving. You stop observing absence with anxiety, and you begin to feel the presence of what is possible with gratitude. This is the point at which the universe changes its behavior. Not because you forced it, but why did you change the observer? And when the observer changes, the observed is transformed. There is a phrase that sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but is accepted by the entire quantum physics community. Nothing is real until it is observed. This is not spiritual poetry. It is the basis of quantum mechanics. It is the heart of the double-slit experiment. It is the point where the most precise science touches the center of the deepest spirituality. Because what physics has discovered at the subatomic level is something that transforms everything we thought we knew about reality. The world is not formed. It has potential. Matter is not a fixed structure. It is a dance of possibilities, waves, probabilities, until someone looks. When the gaze enters, the wave collapses. The particle chooses a place. Reality sets in, but before that, it was all fluid, all potential, all energy. Now bring this into your life. How many possible realities are all around you right now, just waiting for your conscious gaze to become real? And more, what kind of look have you been casting on the world? Because the universe does not respond to its theoretical intention. It responds to the energetic quality of your gaze. If you observe your life with fear, doubt, pressure, the wave collapses into more of that. If you observe with love, with presence, with real faith, not performative, the wave collapses into alignment. Physics doesn't lie. And this teaches us one of the most subtle and revolutionary lessons of the manifestation journey. To observe is to create. Observing is not describing. You are not just seeing what is there. You are sculpting with the gaze. Your conscience is not neutral. She is participatory. She is the brush that colors the invisible canvas of the quantum field. She is the collapse that transforms energy into experience. And here comes an ancient wisdom that finds an echo in modern science. In Buddhism, there is a recurring image, the mind as a mirror. This mirror doesn't just reflect. He molds what reflects. In other words, what you see, you don't just see. You make it exist that way. Quantum physics now confirms this with experiments. Ancestral spirituality already said this with metaphors. But are you living this truth? Or are you still observing life as someone who merely records it, and not as someone who collapses? Because here's the point most people miss. You are not separate from the universe. You are the field. It is consciousness that makes the vibrational choice. And every thought imbued with emotion, every observation charged with meaning, every instant of presence or absence is shaping the invisible. It is collapsing or postponing realities. The particle, as well as its life, waits for an observer. But not just any observer. She expects a coherent look, a look aligned with the frequency of it already is, a look free from the fear of not being. And when that look manifests itself, the world reconfigures itself. You don't create something out of nothing. You bring to the surface what already exists in a wave state. You shape it. It gives the body. It gives reality. And that changes everything. Because now you know, there is no need to chase after realities. It just looks with presence at what is already yours through harmony. The universe is in potential. You are the collapser, and every choice of focus is a creation. While you are concerned with what you are seeing, feeling, monitoring, there is another force operating behind the scenes, silent, hidden, persistent. This force does not manifest itself in the words you say. It doesn't show up in the views you make. She vibrates in the parts of you that you don't see or that you insist on ignoring. Because in the theater of manifestation, what collapses is not just conscious desire. It is, above all, the vibrational field generated by the unconscious. And here's one of the most uncomfortable truths of quantum creation. What you ignore is creating more than what you try to control. Maybe you spend your day repeating affirmations of self-love, but you carry, without realizing it, the emotional memory of rejection. Perhaps you visualize abundance, but your vibrational base still operates on the fear of lack. Maybe you pray for health, but your body still vibrates with self-doubt. These layers, deep, ingrained, almost invisible, are like hidden observers inside you. They collapse realities even when you don't want them to, even when you're trying something different. Because the quantum field doesn't just respond to what you say. He responds to what you, and in essence. And this essence is often shaped by emotional patterns that were installed before you were aware of them. It's what we call vibrational unconsciousness. And the problem is not the unconscious itself. The problem is that you do not observe it. You ignore him. Pretend he's not there. Believe that just thinking positive is enough for it to dissolve. But everything you don't observe continues to collapse. And this is where another key comes in. True liberation does not come from trying to control what you see. It happens when you start to illuminate what you never wanted to look at. Bruce Lipton, when studying epigenetics, revealed something profound. Our perceptions, more than our genes, shape our bodies and our reality. But most of our perceptions are not conscious. They were programmed by our caregivers, by culture, by childhood traumas, and they keep creating, even if you have decided to change. That's why so many people say, I do everything right and nothing changes. It's not that you're doing it wrong, it's just that there are still parts of you emitting opposite signals without you seeing. And the universe, in its precision, responds to that whole, not to the part you show. This is the paradox. What you don't observe in yourself keeps collapsing on you, and not to punish you, but to reveal to you, because the manifestation is also a mirror. And everything that repeats itself in your life is life's attempt to show you what inside you still vibrates forgotten. These repetitions are not bad luck, they are invitations to consciousness. And you don't need to be afraid of that. You just need to start looking, not with judgment, but with presence, with love, with curiosity, with the courage of those who know, if I can observe, then I can change. And by bringing light to the unseen parts, you begin to change what once seemed impossible. You rewrite patterns, dissolves internal contracts, releases stagnant energy and memories. And the most incredible thing happens, the universe changes. Not because you asked differently, but why did you become a more complete observer? And when the observer zooms in, the field reconfigures itself. Because what I was creating in silence is now being cured with attention. And attention at that level, no more pain collapses. Collapse liberation. Imagine a mirror that not only reflects but recognizes who is in front of him, and based on that, changes what he shows. This mirror is reality, and the image it projects depends not on what you want to see, but of who you believe yourself to be as you watch. This is the essence of quantum collapse. You don't see what exists, you see what you are. And that identity, the vibration that silently supports who you believe yourself to be, is the greatest filter of your reality. You may claim that you want abundance. But if, deep down, you still vibrate like someone who doesn't deserve it, your gaze will be selective towards the lack. You can declare that you are ready for a new love. But if your identity still carries the fear of rejection, your attention will be drawn, without realizing it, to relationships that confirm this pain. This is the observer's subtlest trick. He only sees what confirms his self-image. You can be surrounded by opportunities and not see them. You may be being loved and not feel it. You may be seen and still feel invisible. Not because the world isn't giving it to you, but why does the inner observer not believe that he can receive? And here's the detail that few people notice. Your identity is not who you are. That's who you're repeating emotionally. Identity, from an energetic point of view, is not a fixed concept. It's a frequency sustained by emotional repetition. And that means can be changed. But you can't change identity with logic. You don't change with mental effort. You can't change with memorized phrases. You change your identity by changing the vibrational state of your body, changing the way you feel about yourself, changing the observer. Joe Dispenza usually says that you must become the new you before the new reality appears. And this transformation begins with a simple but profound internal movement. Stop trying to change what you observe and start changing who is watching. You are the field. You are the filter. You are the encoder of reality. And that changes everything. When you take on a new vibrational identity, that of someone who is already collapsing, who is already worthy, who is already thriving, who is already loved, your perception changes, and with it, reality changes. But how to do this in practice? Start with internal language. Notice how you describe yourself mentally. What stories do you repeat when no one is listening? What silent phrases are defining who you believe you are? Phrases like, "That never works for me," "I always mess up," "There's no point in trying," "I am not enough," "It's more difficult for me." These sentences are not just thoughts, they are identity codes. And each time you repeat them, you reinforce an old observer, one who only sees what he has already seen. But there is a new observer available, one who thinks kindly, feel with presence, choose freely. And it can be activated now, not as magic, but as a vibrational practice. A practice that begins with paying attention to what you say to yourself, and that deepens with conscious reprogramming of internal language. Tell yourself every day, "I am becoming someone who sees beauty where I once saw pain. My body is learning to recognize safety. My attention is free to perceive the new. I am able to observe reality from what I desire, not from what I fear." These statements, if said with feeling, are seeds, and over time they change their frequency. They change their point of attraction. They change the way the mirror of life reflects you. Because the universe is a mirror that does not respond to who you are, it says to be, but to whom do you feel that is? And when the observer changes, the world changes with him. Have you ever noticed how, even though you understand all the concepts, you keep collapsing into the same experiences? You read about the quantum field, study about frequency, practice affirmations, but when life gets tough, he reacts again as he always has. It's as if you know everything with your mind, but your body still lives in the same old pattern. This isn't an inconsistency, it's biology. And it is also the biggest secret of manifestation. Reality does not respond to your intellect. She responds to your emotional vibration. You can understand quantum physics, memorize the terms, study wave mechanics. But if your body vibrates with anxiety, if your heart is out of sync, if your field is charged with fear, the collapse will continue to come from the dominant emotion, not from learned logic. Creation does not happen by what you know. Creation happens by what you feel as truth in your body. And here, most people get frustrated because they believe that thinking right is enough. But the universe doesn't read minds. He reads frequencies, and the strongest frequency is always the emotional one. That's why so many people live their lives trying to understand in order to change. But the real change begins when you change how you feel. And this change is not something that can be forced. It's something that cultivates. Neville Goddard said, "You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are." And what you are is not an abstract concept. It is the vibrational sum of your dominant emotional states. If you live looking forward to the future, but feeling stuck in the past, your vibration is still that of the old you. If you desire the new, but are afraid of the unknown, the frequency that commands you is that of resistance. If you claim to deserve it, but feel unworthy, the field responds to the feeling, not the statement. The collapse of reality is essentially an emotional act, because emotion is the most powerful, energetic language you have. She is the seal of creation. It is what transforms a thought into vibration, a desire in command, an intention in sign. And it's not enough to feel a little. It is necessary to teach the body to get used to the emotional state of the desired future, not as fantasy, but as real experience. This is why meditation practices, sensory visualization, and conscious breathing are so important. They teach the body to inhabit a new frequency, even before the external world changes. And when the body learns, the field listens. And when the field listens, it responds. This is the bridge between the invisible and the concrete. And here comes another crucial point. Overthinking can sabotage your jump. The logical mind was programmed to protect, not to create. She will look for explanations, data, and guarantees. You will want to know how, when, with whom. You will doubt, argue, compare, and in this excess of analysis, it interrupts feeling. It fragments the flow. And manifestation depends on flow, not control. So when you think too much, you disconnect from the vibration. You return to the old self, to the frequency of doubt, to the need for reassurance, and then the field freezes. Because the universe doesn't collapse logically, it collapses vibrational coherence. And coherence happens when your mind, your body, and your heart are all saying the same thing. When your thought is aligned with your emotion, and your emotion is being felt as truth, even before the evidence appears. This is where the collapse happens. That's where the impossible becomes natural, the invisible, inevitable, the desired present. All of this, illogical, because the miracle, when it is real, never fits into reason. It happens in the field where the emotion already knows, even when the mind still doubts. And it is this field, vibrational, sensitive, intelligent, that responds to you now, not by what you think, but for what you feel like it already is. Imagine a non-judgmental observer that does not classify, that does not react. Just contemplate, in total presence, each movement of life as part of a greater flow. This observer lives inside you, and when it emerges, the quantum field responds with precision. Because unlike the reactive mind, which collapses realities out of fear, vigilance, or need, this silent observer collapses out of coherence, peace, and clarity. At the deepest level of manifestation, it is not desire that creates. It is the space between desires. It's silent. Silence is the original language of the countryside. It is the 0 point of creation. It is the state where everything exists in potential, but nothing has yet been deformed by expectation. And that's precisely why he is the most powerful observer. Because he doesn't need to. He doesn't wait. He doesn't force it. He simply and in that being, he allows the field to reorganize without resistance. The Tao Te Ching, an ancient book of Chinese wisdom, teaches non-action accomplishes everything. But this non-action is not passive. It is a state of vibrational non-interference. It is the ability to be present without needing to modify the now. No judgment, no control, no attachment to the outcome. In this silence, you do not abandon creation. You purify. You stop contaminating the breakdown with anxiety. And it begins to allow the field to move in accordance with the higher intelligence that governs all things. It's like clean water where when it stops stirring, everything settles. The truth comes out. The direction emerges. Creation flows. Silence is the most refined collapse there is. Because it is in silence that you stop emitting the noise of "it is not yet" and begins to vibrate the "it is" without needing to say it. But why is it so difficult to remain in this state? Because we were programmed to react. The ego feels it needs to interpret everything, control everything, set everything. And every time he reacts, he reinforces an old observer, one that collapses reality based on the past, fear, and separation. But there is a way out. Train silence. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of internal noise. It's when your mind stops screaming to the universe, "Prove me right. Prove I can. Prove that I am loved." And start listening. You start to notice the subtle signs. Begin to enter into communion with what is. That's why the meditation is so powerful on the path of manifestation. Because it turns off the anxious observer and turns on the coherent observer. It takes the mind off surveillance and puts it onto feel. And in this feeling, a new vibration is born. One that doesn't desire desperately. One that doesn't need to be controlled. One that doesn't repeat the past, but which surrenders in peace to the natural collapse of the present. In this state, the field reads you as if you already know, like someone who already has it, as someone who already is. And everything changes, not because you tried hard, but why did the interference cease? You got out of the way, and the universe finally was able to act with the intelligence it always had. Imagine for a moment that every small gesture of yours, every focus of attention, every emotion sustained for a few extra seconds, is a code sending a vibrational command into the field. You don't need a lab to prove this. It just is observing your own life as an experiment. Because it is already happening in response to your frequencies. And it is at this point that creation becomes alive. When you realize that by changing your perspective, you change not only your perception, but what happens next. This is the true power of retargeting. It's not about pretending something is different. It's about choosing where to place your consciousness and watching the field reorganize itself from there. Let's look at a real, simple, and profound example. A woman, after years of feeling invisible in relationships, decides to change her internal experiment. She stops asking why she never gets picked, and every day, start paying attention to moments when you are noticed. She writes, she thanks me, she feels. At first, it seems insignificant, but little by little, the RAS, that reticular activating system of the brain, begins to register more signs of presence, of reciprocity, of connection. 3 weeks later, a coworker invites her for a more intimate conversation. Then an old friend reappears. She begins to feel more seen, not because the world has changed, but because she changed the focus. This is the first point. The world does not react to what is real. It reacts to what you choose to notice, and what you choose to notice grows stronger. Grow up, come closer. Now let's get to the practical technique, vibrational replacement. Every time you find yourself looking at something with judgment, criticism, or fear, stop, breathe, feel your body, and replace reactive observation with a presence anchor. Example, you look at your bank statement and feel scarcity. Pause. Place your hand on your heart. Remember a time when something unexpected came to you. Feel the frequency of trust and say mentally, I'm training my body to see beyond appearances. This simple act, done repeatedly, reprograms the observer. Another everyday experiment, sensory redirection. Use your senses to change focus. When you notice yourself ruminating on something from the past, look up at the sky. When you're stuck in court, smell the coffee. When you are reactive, listen to the sound around you and say, I'm here, now. These small diversions of attention create micro-collapses. They deviate the trajectory of the vibration, and over time they change the timeline you walk on. Because manifestation does not happen in great rituals, it happens in simple spaces for energy choice. The moment you decide to see with love, the second he releases judgment, in the breath where you stop observing the pain and start observing the possibility. This is the turning point. And as I said, Joe Dispenza, if you change your energy, you change what you attract. And if you change what you attract, you will change your future. Creation happens now. Not in the next course, not in the next month, but here, with the way you choose to observe this moment. And the final question that echoes in your field is, if you redirected your gaze today, what around you would begin to blossom?